AITA for teaching my wife and daughter a lesson after they uninvited me from a party I paid for? My name is Jacob, and I am 43 years old. I have been working as a woodworker since I was 19, so I have spent practically my entire adult life surrounded by wood, tools, and sawdust. I am not a businessman, nor do I have a college degree. What I know I learned from my father, who also dedicated his life to this craft. He always repeated something to me that stuck with me. If you are going to make something with your hands, do it well, because your name is on every piece. I took that very seriously. Thanks to that principle, I have been able to make a living for over 2 decades. I work in a detached workshop I have behind my house. It is nothing fancy, to be honest. It is a simple structure with a shingle roof and cinder block walls. I have an old workbench and several tools that I have been buying little by little as I could. Among them are some saws, a planer, a drill press, and many hand tools. There are no luxuries, but I have what is necessary to do my job well. I make custom furniture, tables, chairs, bookshelves, dressers. Sometimes I also do specialized work when someone wants something more specific. On weekends, I usually sell at a local craft fair, and a good part of my income comes from there. In addition, from time to time, a couple of small local businesses, like a new cafe or a startup office, buy furniture from me. It is not a big business, but it is enough to provide for my family. My wife's name is Sarah, and she is 39 years old. When I met her, she worked at a department store in the mall. She has always been very sociable and likes to look good, get dressed up, and take care of her appearance. That never bothered me. On the contrary, I liked seeing her happy and confident. We married young. I was 25 and she was 21. 3 years later, our daughter Madison was born. For a long time, I thought we had a normal family. Not perfect, of course, but stable. We were never rich, but we never lacked what was important. We made our mortgage payments on the house month by month. There was always food on the table, and we made sure Madison went to a good public school. I always had a very close relationship with my daughter. When she was little, she loved keeping me company in the workshop. She would sit on a little stool and watch me work, seeing how I cut the wood or assembled the pieces. What I remember most is that, despite her age, she asked very serious questions. She must have been 5 or 6 years old and would ask things like, "How do you know that's going to be straight? Why does the wood smell like that? Or why do you use screws instead of glue?" I would answer her calmly, explaining everything the best I could. Sometimes I even let her sand small pieces so she felt she was also part of what I was doing. Once we made a small wooden box together, painted it light blue, and engraved her name on the lid. I remember perfectly the day she took it to school for show and tell. When she returned, she was very happy, very proud. She told me she had shown it to her teacher and her classmates. At that moment, I felt that she also valued my work, and for many years I had no reason to think otherwise. Over time, as is natural, Madison grew up. She became more interested in her friends, clothes, social media, and going out. Nothing out of the ordinary for her age. I was never a strict dad. As long as she did well in school and respected certain basic rules, I preferred to give her space. Sarah, on the other hand, always placed more importance on image and how others saw us. She liked everything to look good. If someone came over to the house, everything had to be in order. And if we went out to a community event, she insisted that we all be well dressed. It was nothing serious, but over the years I began to notice certain comments that didn't exist before. For example, when I came in from the workshop, working with wood has something very specific, the smell. Wood, especially when cut or sanded, gives off a strong scent. Add to that the wood stain, the glue, and the dust that gets on your clothes. Even if you wash your hands or change your shirt, that smell never completely goes away. I have always liked that smell. It reminds me of my father and everything I learned from him. But Sarah started mentioning it more and more often. Sometimes she would tell me, "You should change before coming into the house. You're tracking in sawdust, or your clothes smell too much like wood stain." At first, I didn't give it much thought. I figured she just wanted to keep the house clean. So I started leaving my work clothes in the workshop and coming inside with a different t-shirt. I thought that would be enough, but over time I realized there was something else. When we had family gatherings or went out with Sarah's acquaintances, she insisted that I dress better. Not just take off my work clothes, but wear a button-down shirt, dress shoes instead of work boots, that sort of thing. I didn't take it the wrong way either. I understand everyone has their way of seeing things. But the comments became clearer when Madison started middle school. One day, when she was about 13, I overheard a conversation between her and her mom in the kitchen. It wasn't an argument. Rather, they were chatting quietly. Madison was telling her about her classmates. She said one friend's dad was a doctor and another owned a chain of local restaurants. Then, Sarah replied with something that really stuck with me. Every family has its own thing. The important thing is to get ahead. It didn't sound bad, but then she added, your dad works hard, even though his job is different. I don't know if she realized I was nearby, but that word different kept spinning in my head. I didn't say anything at the time, but it wasn't the first time I felt my work was starting to be seen as something lesser inside my own home. Still, I let it go. Time went on and Madison was about to turn 16. In the US, that age can become a very big celebration if the family chooses to do so. A fancy dress, a rented venue, a DJ, catering, decorations, a photographer, the whole works. Madison started talking about her sweet 16 party since she was 13. She watched videos online, showed me dress ideas, and talked about venues and decorations. At first, I imagined something simple, a gathering with family and some friends. But little by little, everything kept growing. A bigger venue, a special dress, a live DJ, a professional photographer. Sarah also got very excited about the idea. She said it was a once-in-a-lifetime moment for her daughter and that it had to be done right. While they talked about all that, I listened in silence and at the same time did the math in my head. I knew perfectly well it wasn't going to be cheap, but I also understood something important. For a 16-year-old girl, that day can mean a lot. In the end, I made a clear decision. For almost 2 years, I set out to save with a discipline I never had before. I started taking on more commissions than usual, large orders for offices, custom-made furniture, and many overtime hours in the workshop. I also began going to the craft fair more often. There were weeks when I practically didn't rest, working 6 or even 7 days straight. Nobody forced me to do it. I did it because I wanted to. I wanted my daughter to have that party she dreamed of so much. Every time I saw the money I was saving exclusively for that event growing, I felt all the effort made sense. Over time, we started covering the expenses. First, we booked the venue and paid the deposit, then we paid for the dress. Next came the photographer, the catering, the DJ, and the decorations. Little by little, everything took shape. When we were a couple of months away from the party, almost everything was paid off. Madison looked happy. She spent hours looking at herself in her dress, trying out hairstyles, imagining her grand entrance to the venue with her friends. Up to that point, I thought everything was going well, but a few weeks before the event, something started to change in the way she acted around me. It wasn't fights or open arguments. It was something quieter, harder to explain. She became distant. When I spoke to her, she answered with few words. If she was with her friends and I showed up, the conversation would change immediately. Also, she stopped dropping by the workshop, something she used to do from time to time. At first, I tried not to give it too much importance. I thought maybe she was busy with school or the party preparations, but one day something happened that made me think there was something else behind all that. That afternoon, I was in the workshop finishing a table when I heard voices near the house. It was Madison and 2 of her friends. They were in the backyard and talking normally, without trying to lower their voices, so parts of the conversation could be heard. I wasn't paying much attention to them until I heard my name. One of the girls asked Madison about the party. She answered enthusiastically, talking about the venue, the dress, everything they had prepared. Then another friend said something that completely changed the mood. Your dad is the one who makes furniture, right? From where I was, I clearly heard my daughter's response. Yes, but he owns a big company that does it for major clients, she said in a tone that seemed to want to sound natural. He has several employees who work for him, and he just manages things. What he does here at home is just a hobby. After that, there was a brief silence. Her friends seemed impressed. Oh, so he's like a business owner, one of them commented. Yeah, something like that, Madison replied quickly. I stood completely still. I had a piece of wood in my hand, measuring, but I stopped moving. It wasn't so much what she said, but the ease with which she swapped my reality for a completely different one. I had no employees, I never did, nor did I run a large company. It was just me, my workshop, my tools, and the hours I dedicated to work every day. For a moment, I tried to justify her. I thought maybe she had just exaggerated to impress her friends. After all, teenagers sometimes do that. They inflate reality to fit in better. But still, something inside me didn't feel right. That discomfort stayed with me the rest of the day. That night, after dinner, I decided to talk to Sarah. I didn't do it out of anger or defensiveness. I just wanted to understand what was going on. Madison was in her room on the phone, so Sarah and I were alone in the kitchen. I heard something interesting today, I told her as I poured myself a glass of water. She looked at me without changing her expression much. What's that? Madison was talking with her friends. One of them asked her what I do for a living. Sarah didn't answer, but she slightly raised her eyebrows, as if she already suspected where the conversation was heading. And she told them that I have a furniture company, that I have employees, and that what I do here at home is more of a hobby. There was a brief silence. I expected Sarah to laugh or say that it was just teenage stuff, but she didn't. She just let out a sigh. And that sigh told me a lot before she even spoke. Jacob, she said finally, I don't think you should take that so seriously. I'm not taking it the wrong way, I replied. It just caught my attention. She rested her elbows on the table. Madison is at a difficult age, she explained. Her friends have parents with different jobs. Some have companies, others more visible professions. That word kept ringing in my head. Visible. I didn't say anything, so she continued. Is it so strange that she wants to present things differently? I looked at her and asked calmly. Differently or dishonestly? Sarah took a few seconds to answer. She is just trying to fit in, she finally said. That word also kept spinning in my head. Fit in. I had never considered that my daughter felt the need to change who her father was to feel part of her group. I don't understand why, I said. We have always been honest about what we do. Sarah didn't answer right away. She stared at the table for a few seconds, as if carefully thinking about what she was going to say. When she spoke, her tone was more direct. Because saying your dad owns a company is not the same as saying he is a woodworker. That sentence fell heavy in the room. I looked at her, not really knowing what to answer. And what's wrong with being a woodworker? I asked eventually. I didn't say there's anything wrong with it, she replied. Just that socially, things work a certain way. That answer left a bad taste in my mouth, but what came next was worse. Sarah got up, walked over to the sink, and casually dropped another comment. Actually, there's something I wanted to talk to you about. About what? I asked. She turned to me. About the party. Something in her expression made me feel uncomfortable. What about the party? She crossed her arms. There has been a slight change of plans. What kind of change? Then she said something I still remember word for word. You're not going. For a moment I thought I had misheard. What do you mean I'm not going? Her expression didn't change. You are not going to attend Madison's party. I felt as if everything had gone quiet. Are you serious? Yes. I paid for that party, I said slowly. I've been working for almost 2 years for that. We know, she replied with a coldness I had never heard from her before. Then, I don't understand, I told her. Sarah took a breath before answering, as if she had everything already decided. There has been a change of plans, Jacob. You're not going to your daughter's party, and it doesn't matter that you paid for it. Her words were so dry and direct that it took me a few seconds to process them. And can I ask why I'm not going? I asked, trying to keep my calm. She didn't hesitate for an instant. Because Madison doesn't want you there. That sentence hit me harder than everything else before. She said that. Yes. I want to hear it from her. Sarah simply shrugged. Fine. She went to the hallway and called for her. A short while later, Madison appeared in the kitchen with her phone still in her hand. What's wrong? She asked. Sarah stepped in. Your dad wants to know why he isn't going to the party. My daughter looked at me. She didn't look upset or sad, rather uncomfortable, as if she didn't know how to get out of there. Dad, she began. Just tell me the truth, I asked her. She stayed quiet for a few seconds before speaking. I don't want you there. I felt something tighten in my chest. Why? She took a while to answer, but in the end, she said it. Because I'm embarrassed. She said it in a low voice, almost like a whisper. It wasn't aggressive, but it didn't need to be. That was enough. Embarrassed of what? She avoided looking directly at me. That people will find out you're a woodworker. The words were clear, straightforward. I don't want my friends to know, she added. I thought that if you didn't go, no one would ask too many questions. I remained silent. Then Sarah intervened. It's nothing personal, she said. We just want to avoid awkward situations. I looked at them both, my wife, my daughter, both expecting me to accept this as if it were something reasonable. That night, I didn't say anything else. I got up from the table and went to the workshop. I spent hours there without doing anything productive, just sitting and thinking. Thinking about all those years of work, about every piece of furniture, about every long workday, about every weekend at the craft fair. Thinking about the party I had paid for with all that effort, and above all, thinking that my own daughter was ashamed of me. 3 days before the party, I made a decision. That morning I loaded several tools into my truck. Some saws, boxes of screws, sanders, and wood. I didn't take everything, just what I needed to be able to work. I drove to my father's house. He had passed away years ago, but his workshop was still there, and used. I opened the place, dusted a bit, and set up my things. I didn't return home that night. I slept right there, on an old cot that was still in the place. The next day, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. It was Sarah. After several calls, I decided to answer. "Where are you?" she asked. "At my father's workshop." There was a brief silence. "Are you really doing this?" "Doing what?" "Acting like you've been deeply offended." "It's ridiculous, Jacob." I didn't answer. "You're behaving like an offended child," she added. "Maybe," I finally said. "The party is in 3 days. Stop the drama and come home." "No." Another pause. "Do whatever you want," she finally said before hanging up. I hung up too. I sat at my father's workbench looking at my tools for a long while. Then I picked up the phone and made the first call. I called the event manager at the venue and told him I needed to cancel the reservation. Then I made another call, and another, and another. With each call, I erased something that had taken me almost 2 years to build. Finally, the day of the party arrived. I was in my father's workshop early in the morning. I decided to keep busy so as not to think too much. I had a pending order, a large dining table. I was adjusting the legs, focused on the work. Working with what has always helped me clear my head. The sound of the saw, the smell of sawdust, the rhythm of the tools, it all calms me. I was sanding a surface when the phone began vibrating on the table. I looked at the screen. It was Sarah. For a second, I thought about ignoring her, but I ended up answering, "Hello." Her voice sounded tense. "Jacob, they are telling me at the venue that you canceled." She didn't say it like a question. It was an accusation. I stayed silent. "Your daughter is already here. With her dress on," she continued. "All the guests are outside waiting for them to open the doors." In the background, there was noise, people talking, cars, movement. "Call them," she said urgently. "Tell them it was a mistake. They have to let us in." Her tone changed, becoming more aggressive. "Don't do this to your daughter. Don't make her go through this humiliation." I left the sandpaper on the table and took a deep breath. "Yes, I canceled everything." There was silence on the other end. "What?" "I canceled the venue," I replied calmly. "And everything else." It took her a few seconds to react. "Jacob, what are you talking about?" "Even if they let you in," I went on, "the venue would be empty. I canceled absolutely everything." Her reaction was immediate. "Are you out of your mind?" I could hear her rapid breathing. "How could you think of doing something like this?" Then she raised her voice. "You really are so immature." I didn't reply. "Your daughter is crying," she added. I heard movement on the other end. "Talk to him," she said. An instant later, Madison's voice came on the call. She was crying. "Why are you doing this to me?" she said with a broken voice. "It is the most important day of my life." She was breathing heavily. "You ruined my life." I remained silent for a few seconds before answering. I spoke with complete calm. "You are embarrassed that I am a woodworker." On the other side, only her ragged breathing could be heard. "But you are not embarrassed by the money that comes out of the workshop." I never raised my voice at any point. "If you want a party, you are going to have to work to get it." There was silence. "With any luck," I continued, "you will be able to do something smaller in a few months." I took the sandpaper in my hands again. "For now, forget about the party." And before finishing, I added, "And remember something. Never bite the hand that feeds you." The next thing I heard was a scream. Not a clear word, but a sound full of rage and frustration. Then Madison's voice returned amidst tears. "I hate you. I hate you." Then there was movement again, and Sarah took the phone. Her tone was no longer the same. She sounded much harsher now. "Do you realize what you've caused?" she said without giving me a chance to answer. "You are heartless." She took a sharp breath before continuing. "Less of a man. And then she blurted out something that surprised me with how direct it was. I should have chosen someone better when I had the chance. I remained silent for a few seconds. Then I replied with the same calm I had maintained the whole time. Don't worry. There was a brief pause. It's never too late to do it. They said nothing on the other side. You still have time to look for that better catch. She took a few seconds to understand what I was telling her. What are you talking about? Then I said it bluntly. I want a divorce. There was total silence. Then I heard a muffled sound. It seemed like she was crying. She didn't yell. She didn't argue. She simply hung up. I stared at the phone for a few seconds before leaving it on the table. Afterward, as if nothing had happened, I went back to work. That same afternoon, I finished the table I had pending. I spent hours focused on every detail, cutting, adjusting, sanding, varnishing. It was strange, but while I worked, I felt a peace I hadn't felt in days. As if I had finally made a decision that had been forming inside me for a long time. The days that followed were not easy. I returned to the house only to pick up some things. Clothes, legal documents, personal tools. The first time I walked in, Madison was in the living room. As soon as she saw me, her expression changed. You are heartless, she told me. She didn't raise her voice, but the resentment in her words was evident. Everyone at school is making fun of me. I didn't answer. I kept walking to the bedroom to get my things. That was what you wanted, she continued from the living room. To humiliate me. I kept packing my belongings in silence. When I came out of the room, she was still there. You ruined everything. I didn't say anything, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I understood that at that moment, nothing I said was going to change the way she saw things. Sarah was in the kitchen when I walked by. Her eyes were red. She didn't say a word. I took an envelope out of my bag and left it on the table. These are the divorce papers. She stared at the envelope as if it were hard for her to even touch it. Jacob, she said with a weak voice, but she didn't finish the sentence. I didn't add anything else either. I took the last box with my things and left the house. A few weeks have passed since then. The divorce process is already underway. Madison blocked me on her phone and on all her social media. We haven't spoken again. I know that to many people what I did might seem extreme, and maybe it is. But that night in the kitchen, I understood something very clearly. It wasn't just that my daughter was ashamed of me. The real problem was that my wife allowed that shame to grow, justified it, and normalized it. She never tried to teach her to respect the work that supported our home. A father can endure many things from a teenage child: rebellion, mistakes, even harsh words. But there is a limit: contempt. And even more so when that contempt is directed toward the effort that sustains the entire family. Maybe someday Madison will mature. She is 16 years old. She still has a lot to learn about life. It may be that over time she understands how wrong it was to be ashamed of her own father's work. And when that day comes, I will be willing to listen to her. But as for Sarah, my decision will not change. A marriage cannot remain standing when something as basic as respect is lost. Comment. This was a heavy story to go through, and I know it brings up a lot of feelings for many of us. It really makes you think about how we define our worth and how important it is to honor our own hard work. Setting boundaries isn't about punishing others. It is about protecting your peace and self-respect. Sometimes, the hardest decisions are the ones that lead us back to ourselves. Remember to be as kind to yourself as you are to the people you love. Healing is not always easy, but it starts with the choice to no longer tolerate disrespect. I hope this encourages you to look at the relationships in your life with clarity. Ask yourself if you are being valued for who you truly are. Always choose the path that honors your dignity, even when it is the harder road to travel. Your peace of mind is worth everything. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.